Hello, everyone, and welcome to Kilowatt, a podcast about electric vehicles, autonomous driving, renewable energy, and much, much more. And this episode is going to come with oodles and oodles of command presence. There's only one person that will understand that joke, and I just threw it in there to see if he will mention it later on. We'll see. Anyway, let's move on to today's show. I'm going to be honest with you. This show was really hard to produce because I had over 80 articles in my queue just for this show. There are so many things that I want to talk about. And I will be clear that some of those articles were covering the same story, but I still had to read them or at least read through them. And I probably still have close to 50 left in the queue that I still want to cover. So expect more than 2 episodes next week. All right, let's go ahead and jump into our EV news. DC fast charger manufacturer FreeWire is closing its California corporate headquarters and laying off nearly all of its on-site employees, which is about 113 employees, on June 24th. If you're not familiar with FreeWire, they produce these DC fast chargers with an actual battery pack inside of them, which allows charge point operators who don't have enough capacity at the panel for a normal DC fast charger to install the FreeWire chargers, because that battery pack will trickle charge while it's not in use. And then there's an added benefit of operators being able to sell back electricity to the grid during peak times. So it's a really interesting idea. Unfortunately, they're closing down. Or are they? I actually wrote this story up, and then later there was a follow-up in Electrek that FreeWire just wanted to just kind of be transparent. And so they sent them this information. So here, I'm going to read you the email as best as I can. As a company committed to transparency and open communication, we want to address the recent discussions regarding FreeWire's financial situation. The EV market is currently facing some headwinds, and like many players in the industry, we are navigating these challenges. However, it is important to note that FreeWire's quality initiatives and production are better situated than ever before. Our dedication to quality improvement has strengthened our market position during these uncertain times. Additional capital is necessary to further support our growth initiatives and ensure continued success. Therefore, we are actively seeking further funding, a step that aligns with strategies pursued by many companies in the industry. Meanwhile, we are continuing operations and supporting our valued customers while we are making these efforts to right-size the company. We remain confident in our team, our technology, and our vision for the future of clean energy solutions. We appreciate the ongoing support of our stakeholders and partners as we work to overcome these challenges and continue to drive positive change in the EV market. I read this as, hey, if we get more money, we won't have to close down. If we don't, we're probably going to have to close down, which sucks, honestly, because like I keep saying over and over and over again, when it comes to these layoffs in the EV space, I hate seeing people lose their jobs. So good luck to FreeWire on finding more funding. If you are curious about FreeWire, I actually did an interview with Arkady Sosanoff, who's the founder and CEO of FreeWire, back last year in, I think it was September of 2023. I'll find the show number and I'll put it in the show notes. So put a link in the show notes if you're interested in what they're doing as a company. I think what they're doing is really smart. All right, let's move on to Fisker. So I have 3 stories about Fisker. I think it's 3. But let's start with a door ding, okay? A Fisker Ocean owner, Joy, we'll call her Joy. That's because that's her name. Joy says her nearly $70,000 Ocean One was hit by another vehicle on the edge of the door. So Joy had the door open on I believe it's the passenger side, front passenger side, and a car came by and hit the door and created what looks like a small amount of damage. It does not look severe in the pictures. An insurance adjuster from Joy's insurance company came out, estimated the damages to be around $900 to repair, but also noted that the repair might actually cost more money because the adjuster wasn't familiar with the vehicle, which it makes total sense. There's not a lot of Fisker Oceans running around. So the car went to the body shop. The body shop called around and they were trying to find the correct parts to fix Joy's Ocean. and they weren't able to find the parts. They even reached out to Fisker's service centers, and they were still unable to find the parts. So about a month goes by, and the insurance company's like, okay, well, we're just going to total your car. And they cut Joy a check for $53,303. Now, keep in mind, Joy had paid close to $70,000 for this car not all that long ago. I don't know exactly when she bought it, but it was not very long ago. So that's about $16,000 in loss in value. In the article, Joy said that she had many other issues with the car that I'm not going to go into here, but kind of line up with what Marquez Brownlee had said when he did his Fisker Ocean review. And she did not have kind words to say about Heinrich Fisker. So I'm not going to repeat them here, but they weren't very nice. Next up, we have a story from Business Insider. Fisker is closing its headquarters in Manhattan Beach, California. This is according to 3 different sources that confirmed that employees were asked to gather their personal belongings and take them to Fisker's Research and Development Center or location in La Palma, California, which is about 40 miles away from the headquarters. It doesn't sound like anyone was let go, but Fisker was notifying employees that if they're unable to raise the necessary funds, then some, if not all employees, would have to be laid off on June 28th of this year. And it's unlikely that if that happens, Fisker is just going to go out of business entirely on that same day. All right, I got one more negative Fisker story, and then I'm going to end on a positive here. Fisker did file for whatever a bankruptcy is called in Austria. So as many of you know, Fisker uses Magna Steyr as a manufacturing partner, and that plant happens to be in Austria. So Fisker filed for bankruptcy. They gave a bunch of reasons why they made this decision, which I'm not going to talk about a lot of them because I'm just not qualified to talk about the financial side of business because I just don't understand it on a competent level. Magna Steyr did say that it doesn't expect to build any more Fisker Oceans going forward. It doesn't sound like the contract between the two companies was canceled. It sounds like the next step in Fisker's de-evolution is really what it sounds like. Also in March, Fisker had something like 4,700 Fisker Oceans just sitting around waiting to be sold or delivered. And based on their current position in the EV market, I'm guessing that people would be more hesitant to buy a Fisker Ocean because of their unfavorable position in the EV market, even though they made huge price cuts on the Ocean. Magna also said that they had to lay off about 500 workers who were working on the Fisker line. All right, let's end this on a positive note because I feel like I'm only talking about the negatives when it comes to Fisker and Tesla recently, and I don't like doing that. So YouTube creator Bjorn Nyland, who tests all sorts of EVs, got his hands on a Fisker Ocean Extreme to test. He did a 1,000-kilometer road test, which is about 660 miles or so. And he said that the Fisker Ocean Extreme excelled in the long-distance range test. Now, I'm not going to go over all the numbers and the entire test. I'll put a link to the video in the show notes because Bjorn does a way better job than I could in explaining how his test works and his results. But I added this last story in here because I think the Fisker Ocean has a lot of potential, and I really want to see either Fisker get the money they need to continue building these vehicles so they can support the people who've already bought them. And for the same reasons, I would like to see somebody buy Fisker so that they can continue. Like I think what the team at Fisker did was it was pretty remarkable. They just couldn't pull it all together with the money that they had. And in retrospect, and I don't have any insight into this, but in retrospect, it seems like maybe Fisker rushed things a little bit too fast. And maybe they should have taken another year and got their software developed and just overall produced a more fully formed project and not a beta, which is kind of what it seems like the Fisker Ocean is at the moment. But my point on all of this is I want to see this company succeed. I know for a fact there are 2 Fisker Oceans in the area where I live. I see them all the time. And recently I saw a third one, which was a white, kind of a cream-colored one. It's a good-looking car. and it's got a lot of potential. All right, I'm going to end my Fisker rant here. It just hurts my heart for a lot of different reasons. The people who have bought the car, the people who worked at the company, and I mean, I don't really have a whole lot of sympathy for Heinrich Fisker. This is like his third automotive company, and he's failed at all three. And it's not that I think he's a loser because he failed, but you know, he's the one that took the risk. He knew what he was getting into. All right, I'm beating a dead horse here. Let's go ahead and get to our Patreon plug. If you like what this show is doing and you want to support the show, you can go to patreon.com/kilowatt or supportkilowatt.com. And there you will get an ad-free experience. So for as little as $1 a month, it'll take away all of the ads. And you'll get the warm, fuzzy feeling in your stomach knowing, and your heart, knowing that you're supporting this show. And all of the money from the Patreon goes directly back in to the show. None of the money from that Patreon goes into my own pocket. That allows me to go to things like CES or the LA Auto Show or buy new equipment. So if you want an ad-free experience and you want to help out the show, check out patreon.com/kilowatt. All right, let's move on to our Tesla news. Tesla has removed job postings from Giga Mexico and many job postings from their North America sites. The removal of jobs comes right after Tesla laid off a whole bunch of people. And they're even laying off more people. They laid off people in the software departments, service teams, engineering teams. They've decided that they're not going to do summer interns this year, which kind of sucks for people trying to learn and get into the automotive business. However, GM says that they're happy to take those interns. I'm sure GM's also happy to take any of the other employees that Tesla didn't want. Tesla is flooding the market with people with a lot of knowledge on how EVs works, how they're built, all that good stuff. Rich Otto, who's the head of product launches, he is also leaving the company, and he wrote this on LinkedIn. Why leave? It's a company I love, and that has given me so much, but has also taken a pound of flesh. Great companies are made up of equal parts great people and great products, and the latter are only possible when the people are thriving. The recent layoffs that are rocking the company and its morale have thrown this harmony out of balance, and it's hard to see the long game. It's time for a change. So he was in charge, I believe, of the Model S refresh launch, the Model 3 and the Model Y. He's probably, the Cybertruck was probably in there as well. So Rich Otto out of the company, not laid off, not asked to leave. He just decided, you know what? I don't like the way this is heading. It definitely, whenever layoffs hit, it definitely has an effect on morale and the way that the Tesla is doing layoffs at the moment. I can't imagine that, you know, morale is high at Tesla. So kind of staying on the subject of layoffs, we're trying to still figure out why Elon decided to cut the entire Supercharger team. And I don't really have any additional info on that. There are rumors, and probably the most prevalent rumor, and the one I give the most credence, is that the Supercharger team, I can't remember, Rebecca, I can't remember her last name, she didn't want to do as deep of cuts when it comes to layoffs as Elon wanted, so Elon just let the team go. That's not proven. Nobody's been able to validate that as true or not, but that's kind of the running theory that everybody's, or many people are going with, I should say. But even a week after this happened, we still have a lot of questions, like what's going to happen to the sites that Tesla was going to build on, and they've decided not to. What happens with the existing Supercharger team? I don't have what I think are great answers for you, but I do have some answers for you, and we'll try to piece this together as the weeks go on. So Elon did say on Twitter that Tesla will be spending $500 million on expanding the Supercharger network. So this is his tweet. Just to reiterate, Tesla will spend well over $500 million expanding our Supercharger network to create thousands of new chargers this year. That's just on new sites and expansions, not including operational costs, which are much higher. Okay, and who's going to maintain them? Because I had actually thought that the team that Tesla laid off was just the team that was doing the designing and, you know, setting up the installs, that kind of thing, like the bureaucracy work and the design work. But it sounds like Tesla let go of some of the service technicians as well. So let's see, I think it was Inside EV spoke to some of those folks who were laid off, and this is what they had to say. Here are some quotes. 2 weeks before the layoffs, the Supercharger team was told that charging was one of the most important departments in the company. And that does make sense. So Tesla did a big round of layoffs, and somebody decided, hey, we're going to get everybody together and say, hey, listen, you're valuable to the company. And it turns out maybe not as valuable as they thought. All of these folks that talk to Inside EVs talk to them on the condition of anonymity. They wanted to be anonymous. One employee who worked on the diagnosis and repair side said, we couldn't keep up, and now the network is even larger. Now, guess what? There are even more consumers that are going to be and there are going to be a lot more issues that could possibly come up. So he's referring to the Supercharger network obviously growing, but even when it was just Teslas hitting the Supercharger network, they were really busy trying to keep the Supercharger network up and running. And now you have more customers because it's open to the Ford folks and the Rivian folks. And then you have those Magic Dock Superchargers with the CCS1 adapters. So it's a lot. And all of those folks who are left to maintain the Supercharger network are going to be busier. I'm sure it's going to be an interesting next couple of months for them, for sure. Here's what another employee had to say. What I'm hearing is there's still some guys in the field, but they're going to be pretty overtasked. And for those employees who are left, they're kind of like worried and concerned about their positions as well. And that does make total sense. I'm going to read you one last quote here. I was pretty much available 19 to 24 hours a day. I had to stay connected to my phone all of the time. I sacrificed a lot of family time. Now, I would imagine that this person, and I don't want to put feelings on them, but if I were this person, I would feel a little bit betrayed because, you sacrifice, anytime you go to work, you sacrifice the time with your family. And being on call 19 to 24 hours a day is pretty significant. Now, I will say that the Supercharger network layoffs, I feel anyway, like it's hit the North American market much more than the European market, because the DC fast charging in Europe is a little bit of a different story. They use the CCS2 standard for the connector in all of Europe, I'm pretty sure. And that includes Tesla. Tesla doesn't use the NACS adapter in Europe. I think they tried early on and they just gave up and started using CCS2 because Europe has different standards and laws that you have to follow. I even think at one point they put both the CCS2 connector and the NACS connector next to each other, if I'm remembering right. But anyway, in Europe, there are 390 companies that are operating DC fast charging networks, and they installed over 13,000 DC fast chargers in the first quarter of 2024. That's compared to just under 4,000 DC fast chargers in the same time period in North America. Not to say that it's not a big deal in Europe that Tesla did this. It's more to say they have other options. Now, what their uptime is and how that all goes, I honestly don't know. If you live in Europe, let me know what your experience is when it comes to fast chargers. At one point, the European Union wanted something like a charge point every 60 kilometers. Now, whether that charge point was level 2 or level 3, I'm not really sure if they qualified that, but that was the goal. All right, let's move back here to North America, because with the layoffs, Tesla sent out a email basically to their partners, and we read that email last week, and I won't go into it now because we're kind of running long, but it was basically like, hey, if you haven't started build anything, don't. If you are almost done, hold off until we contact you, that kind of thing. Like, we don't know what we're doing at this point. A decision was made, and now we're trying to figure out what the repercussions were. Is what it sounded like to me. And by the way, we don't know when you're going to get paid. So some of those sites that we talked about were just completely abandoned. Tesla's like, we're not building any superchargers here in this location. Well, British Petroleum is looking to actually purchase those abandoned sites, or at least, swoop in, maybe not purchase, maybe swoop in and make those partnerships with whoever owns or manages the property. And BP would like to install chargers at those spots, which makes a lot of sense because Tesla probably spent a lot of time and money trying to figure out where is the best place to put their superchargers. And BP can basically come in and say, hey, listen, I see that Tesla was interested in all these locations. We're going to come in and we'll put our chargers in there. And guess what? BP's chargers, in many of the cases, are Tesla superchargers. They use the Tesla supercharger hardware. BP bought like $100 million worth of Tesla supercharger hardware. So, they're not going to, with $100 million, they're not going to become a big, huge player in the EV market when it comes to charging, but it is definitely a start. And I would imagine that they'll buy even more if they can find some success. All right, this is our last story. The National Highway Transportation Safety Administration is ordering Tesla to release internal communications on autopilot and full self-driving. So Tesla issued a recall because the National Highway Transportation Safety Administration did an investigation and said, hey, in order to comply with the results of the investigation, you need to make these changes. Tesla made those changes, and there were more accidents that occurred after Tesla made the changes, and there were 13 deaths linked to autopilot. Now, the National Highway Transportation Safety Administration is questioning whether or not the changes that Tesla made were actually effective, and they want to revisit the situation. And now Tesla has to hand over more extensive information, which is basically, I think the way it was worded as all data and documents on full self-driving and autopilot. If Tesla does not comply, they could be fined up to $135 million. Now, that's one issue that Tesla's facing on one side of things. On the other side, according to Reuters, Tesla is being investigated / probed by the U.S. Justice Department for securities and wire fraud by misleading investors and consumers over their claims on full self-driving and autopilot and what the capabilities are. This is according to 3 sources familiar with the matter. What this boils down to is Tesla might be in trouble for overselling the software package's actual capabilities. What can they actually do? So the Justice Department believes that some of the claims Tesla has made could constitute securities or wire fraud. And again, this is autopilot and full self-driving. To my knowledge, Tesla has never officially come out and say that full self-driving can drive itself without a driver's supervision. I don't think Tesla's ever said that. When you sign up for full self-driving, there are a lot of things that you have to agree to in terms of paying attention, and you're still the person in charge of the vehicle and all that stuff. The bit that might get Tesla in trouble, however, is Elon has made many, we'll call them qualified statements about full self-driving and autopilot, where he says, well, don't quote me on this, but I think this is where full self-driving could be in 3 months. And spoiler alert, it's rarely ever there. These statements, coupled with, the video that Tesla made in 2016 of the car driving on autopilot from an employee's house to the Tesla headquarters, that video was very doctored. It was cut to make it seem like it was one trip where the driver didn't have to take any interventions at all. And I think this was in 2016. This would have been hardware 2. And it turns out that that was a lie. They definitely doctored that video to make it look like it was the full self-driving was capable of doing something that it wasn't. Now, if you remember, Trevor Milton, who's the founder of Nikola Motors, got in trouble for doing something similar. Basically, he created a video of his hydrogen semi-truck, which was supposed to be powered on hydrogen, driving down a windy road. In reality, there was a slight grade, so this truck was just rolling down the hill. It wasn't powered by anything except for gravity because the truck didn't work. And he was found guilty of misleading investors, and he had to pay a bunch of money in fines. Although I think with all of the money that he made from Nikola and his claims ended up being more than what he paid in fines. So he definitely came out ahead for cheating in this regard, but he also had to go to jail. So we'll see what happens when it comes to what they're going to do with Tesla. This is just a probe, and I honestly, I'm not a lawyer, so I don't fully know the difference between a probe and an investigation. I'm guessing probes lead to investigations, but there are a few different outcomes. One could be criminal charges, which is what Trevor Milton got. The other one would be civil sanctions, and then the third option is nothing. But there are some things that we might get out of this as EV enthusiasts and the folks that listen to this podcast. And that is, if it goes to court, if it goes to trial, some of these Tesla internal documents will become available to the public record. So we'll get to see a little bit more in terms of the internal communication of what the Tesla teams were discussing when it comes to full self-driving and autopilot. So with the last two stories that we talked about, you might be thinking, well, Tesla's going to mind their P's and Q's when it comes to full self-driving and autopilot. Well, the answer to that is nope, they're not. They may be getting rid of the steering wheel nag. So if you don't know what the steering wheel nag is when you are using autopilot or full self-driving, you actually have to provide a little bit of torque on the steering wheel, or, turn the dials on the steering wheel, like the volume up or down or something like that, to show that your hands are still on the steering wheel and that you are actually paying attention. Tesla may be getting rid of this with version 12.4, which might be released next week. So when I say maybe and might be, what I really mean is Elon's saying stuff on Twitter, but who knows when this stuff's going to actually come out and when it'll be released. Now, is it in the end of the world that Tesla is getting rid of the steering wheel nag? Not really, because they have an internal camera that can check in to see if you are actually paying attention or not. If your face is in your phone or looking in the back seat, the internal camera knows that you're not paying attention to the road. However, based on the last two stories, maybe this isn't the right time to roll that feature out or to get rid of that feature. So we'll see what happens, and I'll definitely keep you posted. All right, everybody, that is it for me this week. All of the links to the things that we talked about will be in the show notes if you'd like to learn more. I know I'm getting this out a little bit late. Like I said, this one was a tough one to put together, and I don't know why. Sometimes it's because my brain is tired and it's just harder to get things out. Sometimes it's because the stories are kind of dense and you're trying to figure out where the actual truth lies. And I think this was a little bit of part A and part B. And sometimes I'm just an idiot, and it could be a little part C as well. So, all right. I hope you all have a wonderful weekend, and I will talk to you next week. I don't know what the shows next week will look like because, like I said, I have a lot of stories that I want to cover. So next week, there might be 3 shows, maybe 4. We'll see. We'll say 3 for sure. All right. Thank you, everybody, for listening. I hope you all have a wonderful week, and I will talk to you, let's just say, soon.